Hello, my name is Hans Viken and I am a business manager at Eneo Solutions. So I'm going to talk about how to secure your renewable supply to buildings, and it's going to be about photovoltaics, how you produce electricity from your rooftop. So it's nothing else, it's just focused on that part. Okay? Okay, so I'll start by saying that I'm gonna have a quick overview of the market, both internationally and in Nordics or Sweden specifically, and then I'm gonna move into and have a look at the economics of photovoltaics, and then we're gonna look at alternative ways of having that on your facility, and then and then also have some, I'm going to show you two different cases that we have right now, and then I'm going to end with some recommendations. It's a whole lot, so I hope I hope I have time. So what you see here is the worldwide growth of photovoltaics. The important thing about this is look at the curve, the development. It's pretty much in 10 years we have seen this development, the growth. And you're going from like nothing to 2% of the total electric producing capacity in the world in 10 years. What's important about that is that that's nothing, it's disruptive. It's going to have a huge impact on us. Of course, we're quite late in the Nordics because it's pretty much the worst countries in the world to have solar panels, but since the prices are coming down, it's going to be viable here as well. So what you can see here is that also that the expectation is it's going to be like 5% in 2020. And you'll have, if you look back, you have a learning curve at 20%, meaning that as soon as you double the capacity, the price goes down 20%. And even if you look just at the latest years, that's up to like 30% or something like that. You also know that we reached grid parity in 30 countries around the world, meaning that it's equal or cheaper to have photovoltaics than to have any other kind of electric producing equipment. And when it comes to Sweden, I don't know about the other Nordic countries, but when it comes to Sweden, we reached that parity when it comes to rooftops. And I'm going to explain more about that later in the presentation. But more from an overview perspective, this is solar radiation in Europe. And the different colors, of course, shows how much solar radiation we have. And the takeaway here is that it's pretty much the same colors in Germany that you see in large part of Sweden, or the populated areas in Sweden anyway. And if you look at Germany, you have like 8% of the total production in Germany it comes from photovoltaics. The same figures in Sweden is 0.1%. So it's a factor 80 difference. There's a huge potential in Sweden. Then you have, if you look at the public view in Sweden, you have two different polling institutes in Sweden. It's SIFO and SOM Institute. And they asked questions, and one of them was 2 out of 3 Swedes want solar panels on their facilities. And the other one was 80% of Swedes want Sweden to invest more in solar power. So there's a huge acceptance among the public that we should focus on that. And the last picture I'm going to show you regarding the market, or so to speak, is the development in Sweden, the photovoltaics development in Sweden. Never mind the figures, it's just the shape of the curve. It's exponential. So that's the point here. So when it comes to securing renewable supply, one of the most important parts is to look at photovoltaics. And I'm saying it's definitely a viable source of electricity. So I'm going to state that. And the question often comes up then, okay, where do you start if you want to do this? Do you go directly to implementation, or how do you do it? My suggestion is that you start with why. Why are you going to do this? It's really important that you have like connected to the vision of the company and the sustainability part of that vision, and so you build the foundation why you're going to do something like this or start. So often it's something like that you want to meet sustainability goals that improve the public image and attract customers, staff, and investors. Something like that. I'm not going to talk more about that because it could be different for different companies, of course. But to build that foundation is really important, I believe. And then you view alternatives. How do you do this then? How do you reach those goals? So I'm going to focus on that for the rest of this presentation. So what happens is that the first thing when I meet potential customers or people that's interested is that if they dig into the question and start to look at it a little bit, they have a lot of different questions. It's about how do I manage the asset, or isn't there a lot of rules and regulations I need to understand here, and what kind of options do I have? These are all questions that you will find when you dig into this question. So what happens is that I often try to start from another position and say, how would you view this asset? How would you describe this asset on your facility? And I believe it's really important to say that it's actually a small power station. Why would I call it that? It's quite different if you compare it to HVAC or any other kind of equipment you will have in your facility, because this is an electric producing equipment. So the whole idea with it is to make as much energy as possible. That's the cloud there. The bigger the cloud, the better use you have for this equipment. And you need to view it over the whole lifetime as well. So it's approximately 30 years, some say less, some say more, depending on the equipment. And if you have this view of it, you can depict some really important questions. You have the economics, of course, and other important questions. So let's dig into the economics of it. So you'll have like the LCC perspective of it. You need to look at the cost, first of all, over 30 years. You have, first of all, the dark green area there. It's the turnkey solution, the EPC, Total Entreprenad in Swedish. Like 30% of the turnkey solution will be the pounds that you see, the visible part of it, so to say. Above that, you'll have additional works, which is ändrings- och tilläggsarbeten in Swedish. Often, that's a part of it. Many will say, no, we don't have that, but many do. And then you have like capital cost over the 30-year period of doing this. And of course, more related to the whole time, the 30 years, is consultants, internal time, and service and reinvestment. So managing operations of this power station, so to speak. And in Sweden, we have government subsidy. It's 30% of the turnkey solution. So that's a part that will make the cost go down a little bit. But that's major parts of the cost part, so to speak. If you look at the revenue side, it all relates back to the amount of energy you produce. There's nothing else you can make money off. It's just the kilowatt hours. And the huge part, the biggest part, is to avoid cost in the building. Remember that we're talking about roof-mounted PV, not the parts you can see when you build larger on ground. This is just focusing on facilities. So the thing is that you avoid the cost, electricity cost, if you're inside the building, inside the meter, so to speak. And it's three different parts. It's the electricity, it's the taxes, and it's the grid cost, the transformation cost. And in Sweden, that's about roughly 1 crown per kilowatt hour. And then you have the surplus electricity that you produce that you don't use inside the house. That's a part you want to sell out. Today, you make these assets, the installations. You tailor them to match the need in the facility. That's the only way to reach an economically viable solution. But still, there's going to be times during the summer that you need to ship out electricity. So that's a little bit of this when it comes to the revenue side is that you sell this. And then the third and last is that you can sell the electricity certificate that says this is solar energy, and there's a value in that as well. And that's the whole revenue side of this. And I also mentioned that there's some really important questions, and I'm going to mention 4 of them, and they're all relates back to what kind of different risks you will face if you build. First of all, you have the CSR part, which means that you need to understand how you source this equipment. All the way, there are simple ways to understand this and to manage this, because you might get asked later on when you're going to show for that you produce this amount of energy, and they're going to ask how you produced it. Then you need to understand the supply chain. Where did your panels come from? How did you install them? Did you follow rules and regulations about that? So the CSR part will be important. You also have the sustainability part, meaning what about the carbon footprint? Many think that as soon as you put this up on your roof, that's free electricity. But you need to remember that when you produce the solar panels, you start out with having some debt to that. You need to work that off by producing electricity first. And if you don't produce electricity, you might end up having a less good facility or asset that's not that good. It might be even worse than the electricity you buy from the grid. Then you have the business value. This relates back to the why. Why did you start out doing this? What kind of vision are you relating to here? And it's important to try to reach that by focus on different kind of stakeholders and getting the best out of it. And the fourth part, which is, I should say, one of the more important part, is that there's a legal risk. Since this is a power station, it's different kind of laws connected to it, especially the 3 first one there. It's the Tax on Energy Act, Electricity Act, Electricity Certificate Act, and so forth. And this looks quite, there are similarities all over the Nordics to this. It might be called different things, but the legal risk is there, and there are risks of breaking these laws. So now I talked about the economics and the different risks about it. Let's look at the alternatives then, of how you can do this. And I'm going to plot them on the graph here. You have your own risk and your own work. And the first thing is total entrepreneur, the EPC contract, to do everything yourself. Most facility owners are quite aware how this works. They understand, and the organization understands how to do this. But you take the most risk, and it's the most work to do this. And of course, you're going to use consultants for support and installers to build your equipment. Next step is that you can have a version of that and giving more work to consultants, and the installer can have a larger part of the risk here. But still, you own most of the risk. Another way of doing this is to look at it from a new business model that started out in more developed markets such as the US, called PPA. It's power purchase agreements. You have a really well-known company which Tesla just bought. That's Solar City in the US that makes this. Well, that's about that one contractor owns, builds, operates, manages the whole thing, and just sells the kilowatt hours from your rooftop to you, the solar power. So you don't have, the whole risk is on the supplier. And the payment is just for the produced kilowatt hour. And then you have a version of that where you partly finance that, but still the whole risk lies on, most of the risk lies on the supplier. So what we have here is, first of all, the EPC contract and the PPA contract. That's the two different ones. And then there's versions of those, so to speak. And of course, you have different kinds of suppliers who can help you out regarding this. So why would you choose the other one before? Why would you go the EPC way, or why would you go the PPA way? I'm going to pause that question a little bit and look at two different cases. First of all, it's retail property that we made a deal with, and I'm trying to show you the two different ways for them to do this, and they chose the EPC way. The PPA way, sorry. So this is a facility in the Infracity. The owner is Profi Fastigheter. You know when you drive out to Arlanda on the right side. It's quite large installation. If they were to do this by themselves, they would roughly cost them 3 million to do this as an EPC contract. The important thing is to understand that if they were to go the EPC way, all the responsibility regarding administration, monitoring, and reinvestment service, technical and legal management, and so forth will lie on them during the whole time, the 30 years. What they choose was to go the PPA way with us. So the price for them is 0.93 crowns per kilowatt hours, and that's locked over time. The only thing that can make this higher is KPI, konsumentprisindex. I don't know what that's in English. So it's going to go up a little bit. And another thing is that they only pay for the delivered kilowatt hours. So if it's not sunny, it's not going to produce kilowatt hours, and that's our problem, not their problem. So we're taking that risk. And they also, if they want to change their mind and go back to the EPC way, they can also purchase this asset. So, and that's fixed each year, so they're going to know exactly if they want to buy it year 5, they know exactly how much they can buy it for. So that's a private company and a commercial property, and the other one is a public organization. It's Järfälla kommun, municipality. So it's a local government. I guess most of you know where this is. It's west of Stockholm. In this case, it's quite larger. It's 770 kilowatts. That's how you measure the size of it. It's 10 different facilities. It's one public procurement process. And we just won that before the summer here, so we're going to start to install this now. If they were to do this by themselves, it's approximately 11 million installation cost, or the EPC contract. They chose to go with us at the price of 0.92 crowns per kilowatt hours. And it's the same deal as we have with Profi Fastigheter, the other case. And they have a 20-year view on this as well. Okay, so why did they choose to go this way? I'm not saying this is the only way. It could be viable to go this EPC way as well. But these two cases, they went the PPA way. What they did was to evaluate the alternatives looking at it from a life cycle cost perspective. So they put up, if we're going to do it by ourselves, it's going to cost this much if we go the EPC way or the PPA way. And for them, it turned out to be cheaper to go the PPA way then. But that wasn't enough. They wanted to kind of stress test this and look at, okay, what about if we don't do anything? Never mind our sustainability goals. How does it look if we look at buying it from the grid then? And in this case, it was cheaper than if you look at the whole, it was cheaper for them to go the PPA way instead of buying electricity. So in this case, in both these cases, we reached grid parity in Sweden. And these are the evidence for that. And I believe that was a huge part for them, why they chose also to go this way. But then I said, I'm going to give some recommendations how to look at this. And the most important thing is I believe, is to connect to the vision for the company and the sustainability part of that vision. And start with the why. Why are you going to do this? Why are you going to act on this? As soon as you have that foundation, you can start and look at different alternatives of doing it. And I show the alternatives, the EPC way or the PPA way. And that's what I'm going to tell you today. Thank you.